kids gone into the Forest Service, or?
Well, of my 3 kids, my middle kid, Cameron, he worked during the summer when I was in his high school at the Helena Ranger Station with the fire crew. And then the day after he graduated from the University of Puget Sound, he reported to Winthrop, Washington, to the North Cascades jumper base and started his jumper training and became a smoke jumper. And I believe he jumped out of Winthrop for, 3 years? And then he transferred to Grangeville and finished his career, jumped out of Grangeville for probably close to 5 years. And decided that if he ever wanted to have a somewhat normal life, be able to find and keep a hold of a girlfriend or get married and have kids and all those kind of stuff, that he probably ought to find a real job that he could stay home a little longer. Although the jumping was great because he could jump here in the summertime, and then he'd, in our winter time, he could run down to the Patagonia country of Chile and Argentina and do fly fishing. But he decided that that lifestyle had to probably come to an end and get a little bit more normalized. And his older brother, had graduated in business management from Gonzaga and had gone to work for Accenture in Seattle for about 5 years, and he decided that that really wasn't the job that he wanted for the rest of his life, and quit Accenture and got a job with the Kent Fire Department. And so he was with structural fire, and he talked Cameron into becoming a structural firefighter. And so Cameron resigned from the jumpers when he got a job as a structural firefighter for the city of Seattle. And so I've got 2 structural firefighters in the family now.
Well, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay, why don't you tell us about any good deal fires that you've ever had?
Okay, in Alaska, we had on a Friday it was, we had 4th of July was coming up on the upcoming Tuesday. And late Friday afternoon, all the BLM jumpers had already gone home, and we got a call for a fire up on the south face of the Brooks Range, way up above the circle. And so Nels Jensen had loaded up a full load of jumpers in the Doug, and we took off and headed up there, and it was just really pretty country. The John River came down along one edge of the fire. Grizzly Creek came in on the other side of the fire. The Brooks Range was right there. You were looking into it, and as you made your circles for your jumps, you could see some Dall sheep up there and whatnot, and that was really gorgeous. And things had been kind of slow for the last week, and so Nels came back and says, anybody that wants to jump can jump. And so needless to say, 18 bodies went out the door. And fact, our pilot came waltzing back up the middle of the floor saying he wanted to go too, but wouldn't let him. And this fire was about a 5,000 acre fire that had already been manned once and hadn't been put out completely, and there was one stupid little smoke coming up in the middle of it that the spotter plane had reported. And at the most, you probably could have justified 2 or at the most 4 people. But needless to say, as I said, 18 of us went out the door, and we set up camp on this big sandbar, gravel bar on Grizzly Creek, and there was an old deserted miner's cabin, not just a few hundred yards away, and so we set up our camp, and you always jumped with I jumped with a fly rod all the time up there, and so Nels and Allred started making assignments, and so, okay, so we got to stretch this thing out till after the 4th of July, so we can get to the 4th of July in here. So they had 2 folks every day go up to the fire and make sure that it didn't take off, which it wasn't going to. It was mainly to keep it alive until we got past 4th of July, and I went fishing, and so I fished in Grizzly Creek, and then there were 2 smaller lakes down on both sides of Grizzly Creek down toward the John River that the Grizzly Creek ran into, that had some pretty nice pike in it, and then we had some salmon and steelhead coming up the John River at that time. And the Grizzly Creek had some of the best grayling fishing I'd ever run into. They were just nice, 18, 20 inch, 22 inch grayling, which were nice grayling. And so I fished and caught fish for everybody to have dinner and whatnot, and found an old mining gold pan there at the cabin, and did a little bit of gold panning too while I was dinking around. Never found anything, but so we managed to keep that gig going till Friday night, and then the BLM got all antsy because supposedly we were going to have a front coming through, so they wanted us back, and so no, I guess it may have been Monday, and so the helicopter pilot that was going to ferry us back to Bettles came in and landed and started to ferry people out, and got in late, so he spent the night there, and was starting to ferry people out on Tuesday. And so Nels made some assignments as far as sending most everybody back to Bettles to fly back to Fairbanks so they'd be available when the front came through. And then he and Allred were going to go up to the fire on Tuesday and make sure it was out. And then the pilot really liked the country and the looks of the water and whatnot. And so my job was to take the pilot fishing all day Tuesday, which was the 4th of July, double time, and all 9 yards. And so, okay, so he ferried everybody back except for myself and Allred and Nels. And so here we are on Tuesday, 4th of July, and get in the helicopter, and we fly up Grizzly Creek, and point out, well, this has been a good, really a nice productive haul here. This is really nice. So then we sat down in the helicopter and we get out and we'd go fish. Then we'd fish that spot out and get back in the helicopter and go up creek to another spot and try it out and whatnot. And ended up chasing a pack of wolves through the woods and whatnot, and had a great time. And that was probably my one and only really good deal fire that I've ever had.
That's a good one. Okay, do you want to talk about your fire jump out of the Ford Trimotor?
Yes, it was, I can't remember if it was 67 or 68 or 66 or 67, but Sundance blew up in Idaho, and they called for all the jumpers basically that we could get over there, and so they loaded the DC-2 up and the DC-3 up with full loads and headed for the Sundance fire in northern Idaho. And about 30 minutes or so after they took off, we got a call in for Moose Creek. And we didn't have any more active aircraft left at Missoula. And they had retired the Ford Trimotor, but it was down at Johnson's. And so they called the Ford Trimotor up out of retirement. And they brought it down, and so there are 4 of us, I believe, loaded up on the Ford Trimotor and headed for Moose Creek. But by the time we got to Moose Creek, it was too late to jump. It was too dark. So we came back and landed at Grangeville and spent the night at Gville. And the next morning we got up and got back in the Trimotor and went out to Moose Creek, and the 4 of us jumped out of the Trimotor, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that that was one of the last fire jumps ever made out of the Trimotor. And different from coming out of a DC-2 or a DC-3 or whatnot, because it goes so slow that when you stepped off the step and put your arms together and waited for the opening shock, there was no way you could avoid it. You would end up having to look up for your canopy long before the canopy opened up, because it was so much delayed from the faster aircraft that you began to wonder if the thing was opening or not. Well, fortunately they all opened, but just everything was happening in slow motion, but it was really neat.
So how did you get out of that Moose Creek fire? How did they get you out of there?
We hiked out to the Moose Creek station, and then we flew out in the, I think it was the DC-2.
So they came and got you with the Doug.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.